So we're going to take a look at this bit stabilizer. It looks like a Japanese company was involved in the design. Here's the patent information, but the product itself is made in China. What it does is it reduces the wobble or the play in a bit. This is done with 18 locking BBs. So there's two sides to it, an A and a B side. And you need to have these two sides all the way apart so that this surface is flat. If you have these all the way together, like this, then this surface isn't flat. And what happens is it doesn't sit flat on the chuck. So we make sure that side A and B are all the way apart, then this side is flat. Here's a typical USA Milwaukee impact. It fits on there flat. It doesn't interfere with the collar. Here's a JDM Makita. That fits on there perfectly flat. Doesn't interfere with the collar. And it also works pretty well on the Makita pen impacts. It doesn't interfere with the collar on the chuck. So this is the Panasonic pen driver, and unfortunately this doesn't sit flat on the chuck and it interferes with the collar. The bit stabilizer is also a no-go on the Vessel electric screwdrivers, and it also does not work on the Panasonic Exynos electric screwdriver. Does work on non-Japanese bits, but it won't work on bits like this that don't have enough hex shaft that comes out past the end of the chuck. So here's a Japanese bit in a Japanese chuck. That bit runs pretty true. I chose this bit intentionally because the run out on it is very low. It's a very true running bit. And this bit has enough hex that comes out past the end of the chuck that we can actually use the stabilizer on this bit. So it goes on there. We turn this collar counterclockwise and it tightens down on that hex shaft. And I think it does take out a little bit of play. There's definitely less sloppiness there. All right, so then we turn the collar counterclockwise to release it, and that will come off. Here's a Japanese Vessel bit from Vessel USA. It has the E6 anvil that fits into a typical American Milwaukee chuck. Let's get the before shot. There's loads of axial play. Let's just see what it's like with the stabilizer on there. I'm gonna push the bit all the way against the bottom of the anvil. We're gonna turn this counterclockwise to lock that on. And it is much more stable. So there's no axial play and there's very little wobble, if any, left. Basically what's left is whatever wobble or run out there is in the machining of the shaft. Here's another example. This Vera reduced shank number 2 cross point bit. This is a Vessel bit. And you can see that there's not enough shank. The locking collar will not catch on that. This bit also does not have enough hex shaft to catch. There just isn't enough hex shaft there. So this stabilizer can take out the play and the wobble in certain bits that have the right characteristics. However, there is another problem that this product actually solves. And that's the problem of not being able to use bits like this in an impact. These bits just don't have the correct detents. Even this PB Swiss C6 style bit does not lock into the Japanese chuck, and it doesn't lock into the American chuck. It doesn't lock into any of these. On the Makita, there's a little bit of a catch on the C6, but if this is stuck on a screw, it's going to pull this right out of this chuck. So there's really no retention on this. This stabilizer can actually be used in a case like this to get some bit retention. I mean, there's a lot more bit retention there now. But you can see it's not locked in there either. So this is a Filo M-Tech, and Filo makes this with the detent that fits into the Filo smart handles. But I've had situations where I've wanted to use these in a power tool and they just don't work in a power tool because they fall out. There isn't a lot of hex shaft exposed there, and it does fall out just like that. It's a deep spring-loaded socket. If you don't need this to sit all the way against the bottom of the anvil, now at least there's something to retain that bit in this. So there's a lot of wobble in the bit itself. The stabilizer doesn't fix anything in that regard. This one works on the Makita, but it doesn't work on this one, and I'll show you why. When you put a bit like this in here that has no detent, the collar doesn't retract. The collar stays pushed forward because it's looking for that detent to lock onto, and there isn't one. But the diameter of the Makita collar doesn't interfere with the stabilizer, so the stabilizer is able to make magnetic contact with that chuck. That, unfortunately, does not happen on the Panasonic. The collar comes forward, it's looking for that detent, it can't find it. The chuck stays forward and pushes the stabilizer magnet away from the chuck, and there's no magnetic retention there. So this doesn't work for retention on the Panasonic. It works on all my Milwaukees and all my Makitas. So this is an Engineer brand bazooka bit from Japan. So this is another example of a bit that has no detents for retention in any kind of a power tool. Does something like this work on the Vessel electric screwdriver? We've got a similar situation where the lock and collar on the chuck stays pushed forward because it can't find any detent to lock into. There's a tiny amount of magnetic pull there, but it's not very much. So unfortunately, the stabilizer doesn't really work on these Vessel electric screwdrivers to give retention on bits that have no detents. All right, what about the Panasonic Exynos? Again, the collar stays pushed forward, creates a gap between the chuck and the magnet, and we just get a very, very tiny amount of magnetic retention there. The bit can come right out. So this is another blade style bit that you get in kits like this Vessel 220CW. Maybe there's an occasion when you might want to use these in a power tool. You know, the stabilizer can come in handy and give you a way to get some retention on a bit like that that you probably wouldn't normally use in a power tool. I'm pointing that out just to show that this can give you options that maybe you didn't have before. So speaking of options, if you wanted to use these Japanese bits in an American power tool, they don't lock. Maybe you could use one of these to get some bit retention on a Japanese bit. in an American power tool, like that. It's not a true lock, but the bit stays in there. You know, you could just pretty much leave it on your favorite Japanese bit. So that's a look at the Mansion FR91 bit stabilizer. I bought this one on Amazon Japan. There will be affiliate links in the description below. As always, I appreciate any use of my affiliate links. If you feel so inclined, feed the algorithm for me. Stay tuned, and thank you for watching.